Belfast, Wales. Today's guest is Hyang Padme. Hyang served as Director of Spirituality and Education, as well as Buddhist chaplain at Wellesley College for 14 years. She's also served as a meditation teacher at Harvard University, Boston University, Babson College, and Esalen and Omega Institutes. Hyang holds a doctorate in psychology. She has also done intensive Zen training, teaching in Asia and North America for the past 20 years. She has also served as director and abbot of Cambridge Zen Center, and Hyang currently serves as director of the Comparative Religion and Philosophy programs at the California Institute for Human Science. And her new book, Field of Blessings, is out on April 1st. I hope we got the date right.
Yeah, you were close enough. Yeah, that's good. It's March 27th.
27th of April. Okay, no worries. No, thank you. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's great. Just to start off, just for anyone watching, what is Buddhism essentially?
Well, Buddhism is a path of understanding oneself. Buddha originally said, I just teach two things, suffering and the end of suffering, which is to say that when we see through our illusions about the world, we see how we're always pushing against reality. We want something that we don't have, or we have something that we don't want, or there's an imbalance in the physical body. When we get attached to wanting things a certain way, that creates suffering. And when we're able to be with ourselves and the moment unconditionally, that is the release.
Okay.
And so that's where it all begins. And so for that reason, the Buddha was often referred to as the great physician, because this was a teaching that could cure the basic maladies of desire, anger, and ignorance.
And basically, the Buddha, he if I remember, when I was reading this, the Buddha originally, he was like a prince, wasn't he? He was like a ruling class, and then he was kind of, if I remember reading it right, he lived quite a sheltered life, and
yes,
what kind of started him on a journey of kind of figuring out what life's, the essence of life, basically.
Yes.
That's great.
And so as he what really shocked him is that having had this very protected life, he went outside the castle to go visit this orange grove. And he was in the chariot, and passing on the road, he saw someone who was ill, and he got really surprised and shocked. He had been so sheltered, he had never seen that. So that person seemed to be suffering. And so he said to the charioteer, "What's with that?" And the servant said, "That person is ill. They're having an imbalance in the physical body. Maybe, their stomach hurts, or they're having trouble otherwise." And the Buddha said, "Does that happen to everyone?" And the servant said, "Yes, it does."
Yeah.
So the Buddha was so taken aback by that, he ordered the chariot to be turned around and go back to the palace so he could kind of sit this out. And then at some point he decided again that, to go to the orange grove. He gets in the chariot, and the chariot on the road passes somebody who's old. And, the person has wrinkles, and maybe they're moving a little slowly. So at that point, he is so taken aback, he said to the charioteer, "What is that?" And his servant said, "Well, that's someone who's old, and they get on in life, and things just don't work the way they used to." And again, Siddhartha was so taken aback. He couldn't stand it. He said, "We have to go home. I can't believe that happens to everyone. That's so troubling." So another time he goes out from the palace, and they're going to go visit that orange grove. And at this time, the chariot passes by a funeral dirge, and with that, there are people who are mourning, who are wailing, and there's a coffin, and Buddha just can't put that all together. So, Siddhartha asks the charioteer, what is that? And the servant responds, that's someone who has died. They're no more. Their body is finished. And at that time, Siddhartha said, does that happen to everyone? And the servant said, yes, it does. So again, he turned home. He turned the chariot around. And then one more time they went out. And he saw someone who was a sadhu, a seeker, as his servant explained. And again, he was kind of caught in thought, in contemplation of this. And so that was a kind of divine messenger for him. That was the seed of his wanting to look into himself, because he said things aren't what I thought they were. Yeah. For me, something like that happened when I was in high school. I had a really sheltered existence, and I started volunteering on an ambulance. It was a volunteer ambulance. And so I would go out on these calls. And just like that, in the middle of breakfast, someone had passed away. They had already died. And I saw that, and I made contact with that. And it really struck home, very viscerally. And it hit me, sort of in the depths of the soul. And I thought, what is that? How do we live, like knowing that something has to change. And some other times we would go out on this CPR call. So someone has stopped breathing, their heart has stopped. And we would go in there with all the equipment and try to jumpstart. But after 40 minutes of working on the person, it's not like it is in the movies. At most of the time, one out of 4 or 5 times it works, and the other times someone has to go to the next room where the family's waiting and say, I'm sorry, but there's nothing else we can do. And so again, that was like a big hit to my psyche. Yeah. And some other time there was a woman who was giving birth, and it was someone I actually knew from high school, or from right before high school. And it was complicated because she was very young to be becoming a mother. And so what happened then to that mother and to the child later on, I don't know. I just had that instant. Yeah. And again, I thought to myself, what is this all about? What can I actually really do to be of service? Because in some way, with the technology that we had for ambulances, it was a kind of a scoop and run situation. Okay. And not really getting at the root of what brought her to this junction. Where the entire future of her and her child were in a difficult place. So at that time, I went on to college, and I continued a little bit of volunteer work on an ambulance there. But I also looked and continued to look into things in the way that college students do. So I had a roommate who was practicing Aikido, a martial art. And through that, I was very struck by that, because that was really helping me to be present and grounded in my body, present in the moment, in a way that you don't experience if you're in the books all the time. Yeah. So that was amazingly helpful. And my teacher, Kanai Sensei, was one of the founders of Aikido. He was very strong. Very clear, and had a profound grasp of the energy, what is called Qi. So that was giving me a way to directly connect with my life once again. But everyone who was good at Aikido practiced some kind of meditation. And it came that I was preparing for a big test. And I wanted to do well at that. also around that time, I was having this big question in my life because my parents were going through a divorce, and I was wondering what I would do when I got out of college, and all of those kind of existential things. So I started practicing meditation, and I practiced every day, and I took the Aikido test, and it went very well. But then after the test, I thought, well, that wasn't really what it was about, was it? What was that about? Why am I doing this? And so the next morning, I went to the Zen Center for the first time for morning practice. And it became a real focus for my life.
Yeah. And just that takes us into our third question. Going back, I suppose in a way, we talked about the Buddha's kind of existence was kind of like very sheltered and kind of isolated from the real world. I suppose in a way, all of us are insulated or sheltered in some way or another. We might not, I know some people might go, what are you talking about? But I suppose in a way, wherever we are, we're kind of sheltered from what's going on around us. We're kind of very involved. Obviously, we're all very involved in our life, jobs. Obviously, at the moment, with what's going on in the world, we're very focused on that and forgetting about other stuff. So I suppose that's a kind of a message as well, in a way that to kind of try and get beyond that. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, that very much. That we have, that's the illusion that is at the root of all of the other suffering, which is that we think that we are this separate I, and that's isolated and disconnected, and that needs this sort of reinforcement. It needs defending, because otherwise, then what will happen? Yeah. And so through Buddhism, you begin to see that you're not this separate I, that there is no such thing. We have this body of our own, and this kind of small self, but we have that as a way to touch into the big self, which is the truth that we're never separate from other beings in this world. And I think that's one of the useful things about our own experiences of pain or illness, is that at the best that can help us to break through. If we stay present and open to our pain, the medicine that gives us is access to our true nature. It brings us to see, through our own pain, that everyone is suffering like this. It's like an initiation.
Yeah.
And, we have the one thread of our own suffering, but if we follow that thread, we see it connects to this big cloth. And there's a traditional story about that from the life of the Buddha. He was, well known for his teaching and had a very powerful energy about him. So this woman, Kissa Gautami, approaches him. Her daughter has died. And she's been so shocked by that she's carrying her daughter's corpse. And she asks Buddha to bring her daughter back to life. So Buddha looks at her with compassion and says, I will bring your daughter back to life when you bring me one mustard seed from the home of someone who has never experienced loss. So Kissa Gautami is very excited about this. And so she takes off and feels like this is something that she can accomplish. So she goes from house to house. And people say, well, what do you want? She says, oh, I only need like a mustard seed. That's all. And they say, sure, we've got lots of mustard seeds. And is there anything special? And she says, oh, yes, I just have to get it from the house of someone who hasn't known loss, hasn't known grief. And at each door, they say, well, then I'm sorry, then we don't have one because we lost our brother, we lost our father, we lost our daughter. And house after house, it's like this until finally something breaks through. And she sees, that there's, the tears that have been cried would fill entire oceans. And it's not just her. So she makes then this vow to wake up. She joins the community of monastics. And she uses her own experience as a way to be present with the grief of others and to help them to find peace that goes beyond conditions.
No, I think that it is very kind of, I think obviously when we're alive and from when we're on, sometimes you think it's I'm having a bad day and all that, and you forget that well, things could be a lot worse, and there's like they're suffering far heavier burdens than yourself. So it kind of puts stuff. I think it helps put stuff into perspective.
Yeah.
Basically, going on to your book, it's your second book. Is that right? Yeah.
That's true.
Field of Blessings. How did the book come about, and what is the meaning behind the title?
Well, it came about through my own interest in the healing arts. That having been at EMT and then having worked at an acupuncture clinic for people with AIDS back in the early 90s when things were really raw in Boston, I do continue to feel like there's a natural connection. And when I went and researched this, I could see that from the earliest times, the healing arts had been practiced by Buddhist monks. And in fact, that kind of care for each other was taught by the Buddha as really essential to their spiritual life and community. There's a story about how the Buddha visited one monastery, and one of the monks was ill, and he was not doing well. And Buddha took him and took care of him, washed him and fed him and cared for him. And then he turned to the other monks and said, "Whoever tends the sick tends me." Okay. So we have from the beginning that idea that caring for people, providing that support is part of the path of awakening. That through being present with that suffering, then our compassion that we practice in meditation can be put into action. Yeah. And also, when I have sat meditation retreats, 90-day retreats, sometimes they're very intensive, 10 hours a day of meditation practice and very short rest times. That's quite hard on the body. And sometimes it is true that during those retreats, I have needed help from people who practice acupuncture, or who do care for the medicinal herbs. And this book, this project, was a way of giving back to all the people who have helped me, who have helped to relieve my own suffering. Because it's not that I have had great suffering in comparison with so many others, but I realized that my own spiritual practice as a meditation teacher has been completely dependent upon, the hands and the skills of so many others. And also that way of being embodied is, I think, really crucial for us in our meditation practice. That to realize that this is not about transcending the body, but about connecting with it wholeheartedly and letting that be our way of getting to the ultimate. That if we want to understand the ultimate truth, we understand it through this body and mind. It's through the small self we get to the big self, the body of the universe.
And Buddhist traditional healings, is that a mixture of what is that? Is that like a mixture of like acupuncture, breath work?
Yeah, well, many things. Many of the, you could say, complementary and alternative practices that are available now in some way had their roots in Buddhist tradition, actually. So what's known now as Ayurveda, actually, in India was first practiced by Buddhist monks because at that time, due to the caste system, those who were high caste Hindus, Brahmins and such, couldn't minister to those of lower caste because it would have been considered defiling. And so it was quite often the Buddhist monks who did that care. And some of the famous monks, they're like the great sage Nagarjuna in Buddhist tradition, they were also practitioners and scholars of the Ayurvedic healing arts. In that same way, also Thai medicine and massage also have a deep connection with Buddhist roots. And in China, Korea, one of the ways that Buddhism was passed from country to country was through the open door that the people who were bringing these advanced healing arts had. Okay. We're not, always sure, is what about this new philosophy? But if someone is ill and that monk can cure them, well, then let's listen to what he has to say. So there's quite a few stories like that. I think for many historical reasons, those connections between Buddhism and the healing arts became less deeply understood. That's in part due to the colonial practices of missionaries who were concerned for people's souls and all that. But in the Tibetan tradition, there's still quite a strong connection between the traditional medicine and Buddhism. And so in Tibetan medicine, all of the doctors actually practice a visualization of the medicine Buddha. They will make a connection, an energetic connection with that image of the medicine Buddha and that vow, to take care of all beings, this bodhisattva vow. And that then helps them to see each patient who comes to see them as the opportunity for meditation practice, an opportunity to touch into the sacred. So then the way that they see that patient, the way that they're creating the relationship with that patient is part of the healing. Because if you're completely connected to others in this world, then you're much less likely to have a big medical crisis. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but very often those kind of stressors of relationships being a bit frayed or emotions being off, it has a big effect upon the physical body.
Definitely. That kind of takes us into we got with the book. You discuss attachment theory. For anyone unfamiliar with what that is, or for anyone who's not unfamiliar with attachment theory, could you quickly summarize that, and why was this important for the book?
Attachment theory was important because what these healers are really doing and what the practitioners are doing are creating relationship. Relationship itself heals. And the roots of that start way back at the beginning of our lives, before we have any conscious memory, before the prefrontal cortex that has the memory that's conscious is completely online. The first couple of years of our life, we have just implicit memory through the limbic system, through the amygdala. And that is conditioned to store basic, aversion or attraction, but not the details. So for instance, if we met with a dog that was frightening when we were an infant, we might still have a fear of dogs that we can't explain, but it's kind of conditioned in. Or on the other hand, if we smell something that reminds us of home, then that will, again, have a very primal effect upon us. So just in that same basic, deeply embedded way, all of the imprints for our relationships in adult life, they're based on these unconscious patterns. So if we had a caregiver who was kind of dismissive, didn't allow us to connect or to show emotion, then because that's been negatively reinforced, those neural connections get a bit shut down, and it becomes harder for a person to be connected to their body, and harder for them to know their own emotions, and much harder for them to feel and sense where another person is at.
Yeah.
Or on the other hand, if someone is has a caregiver that is sometimes on and present, and sometimes distracted, disconnected, they're preoccupied with their own trauma or just something else altogether, then a person goes into a little bit of a relational hyperdrive. So that on some level, they really want relationship, but expect it to be hard work. And so then that is a pattern that's reinforced through their life, based on their way into relationships.
Yeah.
Now that can change. Those early life experiences can change based on the experience we have of connecting in the here and now with people who are able to provide a really trustworthy relationship. So that's where the healer comes in. By being that trustworthy relationship, they're actually really doing some deep teaching.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Sorry, like basically they're rewiring. They're rewiring.
Yeah. It's kind of rewiring the relational connections and making it possible then for the person to enter into relationships that are genuinely satisfying. And that experience of connection and being alive is what we're all hungry for.
Yeah. I think if you read a lot of stuff now, like the world's very, obviously more so of what's going on with lockdowns in various different countries. We're all very, at the moment, very disconnected.
Yeah.
People have been disconnected prior to this, but probably more so now. Kind of jumping ahead, Chris, what, how could in the modern world that we're in, which is obviously very stressful, obviously when things go back to normal, we're all back to work, and we have those outside pressures. How can Buddhism, if you can summarize, how can Buddhism help us suppose reconnect with ourselves, and then obviously from there reconnect with others?
Well, I would say one way it can help us to do that is helping us create that environment, a kind of healthy relationship with ourselves. Being able to be with ourselves and to sit with ourselves and to be present unconditionally with whatever is going on without abandoning ourselves. If we're having despair or grief or joy or anxiety, it all gets to be there. This is not about creating a perfect image of ourselves, but being able to be present with it, whatever really is. And if we're able to be unconditionally present with ourselves, then we're going to be ready to offer that presence and love to the people that we care about. Yeah. We're going to be able to make connections with friends that are real. Yeah. And also we're going to be able to ground ourselves when something doesn't go the way that we would hope. Because we're really present with our own body, we can feel that honestly and wholeheartedly, and then move on to the next moment with no trace of the last.
Okay, yeah. So basically, it's about being mindful to how we're feeling, how we are at the current time, like not looking at your phone and checking the latest videos on YouTube, or if you're out somewhere on a walk, like probably early on, you're out for a walk, and being aware of how we feel, and also emotions. You were saying about emotions, so being more in tune with them, like whether you're feeling anxious about maybe going back to work or something is is coming up in the next few weeks, and you're anxious about it, be aware of it, and I'm right in saying kind of observe it, but try and, I know it's easier said than done, but try not let yourself run away with that emotion. Is that right? Or am I?
Yeah, well, I guess the way that I would describe it is allow yourself to be fully present with whatever is. It's like the weather. There's a poem by Rilke which says, "Let everything happen, beauty and terror.
Okay.
Just keep going. No feeling is final."
Yeah.
So we feel it, and we absolutely feel it 100%, and we keep going. Yeah. And then through that, we're then able to digest that experience. We're able to get the gold out of it. There's the Leonard Cohen song where he says, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's where the light gets in." So if we're able to be present to our own imperfections, our own humanity, then we are able to be open to that feeling of being alive. In order to be fully present to joy, we also have to be fully present to pain. If we anesthese ourselves, if we numb ourselves to our own pain, then we're also numbing ourselves to our joy. And that numbing makes it really hard to be connected to the people that we care about.
So numbing would be like drinking too much alcohol, or
yeah,
or other vices, kind of block out all the what you're feeling. Is that I'll be right? Yeah.
That's it.
Because I think we do kind of we do kind of think to ourselves, oh, once I get this job and then when they're at, that'll take me to here, and then I'll be happy, and we'll kind of, I suppose, maybe I'm assuming it's just maybe a Western thing that happiness is always over the next hill, or it's over the grass is always greener, but basically the reality is happiness is kind of what you make of your life right now, and it's present now. If you can't find happiness now, you're not going to find it further down the line. Going into one of the practices from the book. I apologize if I butcher the pronunciation here. What is Zalung meditation, and if I pronounce that right, and how does it help with the mind-body connection? I think it's a Tibetan breathing exercise.
Oh yeah, the Zalung exercise. Well, let me show you something that's easy to show just from where we are right now. This exercise comes from Chinese medical Qigong. It's actually Buddhist Qigong. And so with this one, we start out hands at the prayer position.
Okay.
And then we bring them up, taking a breath, and we connect with the energy of the heavens. And as we breathe out, so connecting with the heavens, and then breathing out, we bring them down and we connect with the earth.
Okay.
So breathing in, we connect with the energy of the earth and we bring it to the heavens. Breathing out, we take the energy of the heavens and we give it to the earth. So from the earth to the heavens, and then from the heavens to the earth. And after we've done that for, 10 minutes or so, then we can feel that energy, that qi running through our hands, and we can wash and kind of bless our own body mind with that. And it's a very palpable feeling. It's a beautifully deep, kinesthetically rich practice. And it's very good for all these times when we feel boxed in. You know, it's easy to feel boxed in right now because people have to wear masks. They can't go everywhere they want to do. They can't see their mates. But doing this, one realizes that right where we are, we have all of the connections, you know, the heavens, the earth, all of that is moving through us. We're not separate from that power. We recognize it because we are that. We are nature. Yeah. And so all of this meditation practice and the Qigong is a way to get out of our own way so that that big energy of the universe can come through. And that's where we realize there's nothing missing, there's nothing lacking.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's something I'm glad I am, because one of the people I've interviewed previously, David Tony, he's called the Breath Sensei, and he specializes in breath work. And I think breath work is very much it's becoming more of a bigger thing. I think more people are taking it serious now. Whereas years ago it was kind of a marginal thing. But no, that's really interesting. And you mentioned there you could do that practice daily for 10 minutes, ideally in the morning.
Yeah.
And you can do it stand. Sorry, I'm to get specifics. Can you do it standing and sitting, or
very much? Yeah, I would usually do it standing. Actually, it comes from the medical Qigong master Robert Peng, and it is actually on YouTube. I think I think he has it on YouTube under the name of the 4 Pillars. Okay. There's a few other parts in that sequence, and they're all powerful and beautiful, and it's a really great morning practice. Sometimes when I'm leading meditation in the mornings, I actually will begin with that. If I feel like the room is a little bit too tired. Sometimes when I teach at Omega Institute, people have just gotten off the bus from New York City the night before. Maybe the bus was stuck in traffic. Maybe it's very humid and they just haven't gotten their sleep. So if I look around the room and I see that, then we begin with some of the movement meditation. And then the sitting can be much more dynamic.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's great. One of the Buddhist healers you interviewed, Heidi Herding, she talked about wholeness. What is wholeness, and what is the steps people can take to achieve this?
Well, wholeness, I think wholeness is central because it's this feeling of being complete that's beyond conditions or beyond our diagnosis or beyond a state of disease or what we have or don't have. It's a coming home to ourselves. And the idea is that we're not waiting. We're not waiting for the perfect body or the perfect moment or a time other than this one.
Okay. Yes.
That it's all there. Whatever that wisdom is, or the power, or the strength, or the clarity, it's already there. But we just have to know it's there. And that's why we sit in meditation, because as we sit in meditation, it's like these layers come off that had been obscuring our awareness of that. Yeah. And we see that as if for the first time inside. We connect with our own resources. And sometimes we see the difficult bits as well, but because we're sitting there and we see them, we can also let them go. And so in that way, the meditation is like a general house cleaning.
Okay, yeah. So a bit like, again, just from I understand, we're supposedly we're kind of all walking about like broken pots, and we've got parts of us that we keep hooked together, which is the side that we like about ourselves, and we kind of want everybody else to see it. But then the parts we don't like about ourselves are like the broken bits, and we kind of like brush them around the side, and we'll keep the good side. So is that right? And then so what you want to try and do is integrate all the parts to complete the whole.
Right. It's because the parts were there anyway, But to whatever degree we are disassociating from or refusing to bring awareness to the parts that are harder to look at, to whatever degree we do that, we are casting a shadow, because whatever we can't accept in ourselves is definitely going to trigger us when we see it in somebody else. And that's where this kind of like one up, one down thing often comes in. We see someone and we say, wow, like I'm nothing like that, and I'm so far above that. Well, the reason that we need to say that is because, of course, that's reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves that we haven't come to peace with. We can compensate with, like maybe having like some expensive name brand thing, or having a special car, because we want to be like one up. But that is one of the roots of our human suffering. Like if we need that, if we're compensating, then that's going to be endless. We're always going to be chasing the wholeness, because we're looking for it outside rather than looking for it inside. There's a story that my teacher would tell back in the early days when he had first come from Korea to the United States. He was trying to get to know American culture. And so some of his students took him out to a dog race. And at the dog race, it's like there's this mechanical rabbit. All the dogs are going to chase the rabbit, and the rabbit's going around the track, and the dogs are going around the track. So he bet on this one dog named Clear Mary. And so the race starts, and there goes the rabbit, and there go the dogs. But Clear Mary is looking at the rabbit, and she's looking back at the track. And she looks at the rabbit, and she looks back at the track. And then she goes and she does this thing that no dog has ever done, which is she goes the other way. And she goes the other way, and she sort of jumps up and she catches that rabbit, and, the race is like over. Because, she decided, she realized that this kind of racing after that rabbit in the usual way would not bring happiness. It's the game is kind of rigged. But for us human beings, sometimes we don't see that. We feel like we need to have we need to have a good car or whatever it is. And through Zen and through meditation, it's through that practice of befriending who we are already. Then out of that, we get a little bit more freedom and spaciousness. And we can take all of that social stuff with a grain of salt.
So it's like the traditional was the saying, keeping up with the Joneses. It's just that constantly. One person gets this, then. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Martin Luther King wrote about that in his drum major sermon. He said, everyone wants to be the drum major. Everyone wants to lead the parade. But that's not the heart of the Christian teaching either. It's in the Bible, you see that with the story of Peter and Paul. They say to Jesus, who will be first? Can we sit right next to you in heaven? And he says, if you want to be first, it's not about, like having a special seat. If you want to be first, it's being first in love. It's being first in service. It's not about status. But we forget. But there are these good teachings to return to.
Definitely. I remember there was somebody. It was a podcast. I can't remember the name of it. And they were interviewing a guy, and this guy was. I think he ran a couple of very successful businesses, and they were asking him the secret of his success, and he was saying, literally, simply, be in service of others. He says that he from when he started his business, it was never about. He never worried about the money. He never worried about a status. It was basically how can I serve other people, and that from caring for people, his business just shut off, because then all these people go to this guy will help you out, and so on. So I think that's a very powerful message, and it is very. I think we've all been kind of in a situation where we're kind of oh, he got that nice shiny object, I wouldn't mind getting that.
Yeah.
And then I think once I get that, that'll make me happy. And then the happiness, the enjoyment of it wears off after a couple of days. There's always something new coming out. You conducted with the book. You conducted research to uncover principles of healing across cultures. Can you tell us more about this, and what attracted you to do this research in the first place, and what did you find?
Well, what I found was that there are people who have looked into this before. Like, are there universal elements to the process of spiritual transformation? Joan Cost-Giolino is one of those great researchers who worked primarily in Latin America. And what she found were 3 elements that were necessary. The first one was radical empathy. So the healer really being able to drop into an empathy that went beyond words, so that they could really perceive the client's experience in an accurate way. And that's actually really akin to what can happen in good psychotherapy through something that the psychologist Daniel Siegel calls tracking, where as the 2 people are sitting, their hearts come into a kind of similar rhythm, their kind of emotions, their minds are meeting in a very close way. And then there's a kind of dropping in through which the therapist can sense in their body what the client is also experiencing. So on a psychology level, that rings true. Yeah. Joan also identified the need for transformation, which is that at least the healer needs to transform. Their consciousness needs to change in order to do this kind of work. But very often the client needed a transformation of consciousness as well. That the healing wouldn't happen if like they say, if nothing changes, then nothing changes, right? The client needed to come to some change in consciousness in order to, come back to the fullness of body, mind, and spirit. And then the third thing that she identified was the restoration of relationship. And the relationship was one, the restoration of relationship with the person who was being healed, the client, and their awareness of the larger community. Like finding themselves in community was itself profoundly healing, and that's something that the healer was really facilitating all along. So just in that way, we absolutely do see that with these Buddhist healers, that they are working to restore that sense of relationship, as we had been saying, through the kind of connection, what we would say healthy attachment is being formed. But also within the Buddhist healing context, I found that mindfulness was a kind of prime ingredient, a key factor, that through the healer's own mindfulness, they were creating that field of blessing within themselves, the field that we could say a coherent field, through which then the client is going to be able to attune to that. Yeah. It's something about self as instrument. We can't take people to a place that we haven't gotten to ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. It's like you can't be like trying to be a swimming instructor, but you're scared of the water.
That wouldn't work, eh?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You touched on mindfulness there, and mindfulness, as you know, especially in the West, it's become a big thing. There's mindfulness apps. I think the National Health Service here is mindfulness. You can go on the NHS website and it talks about it and recommends a few things. If in practice, like if anyone maybe consider to implement mindfulness into their own life, or maybe give it a go and maybe find it difficult and kind of pack it in, what kind of advice or tips would you give for somebody to kind of implement mindfulness, or if you could also even explain mindfulness to maybe someone who's maybe watching this and going, what are they talking about?
Yeah, what I would suggest is that people set aside a certain amount of time a day, every day, even if it's just 15 minutes, but show up for that, have discipline wholeheartedly. And then every day, it's like building a muscle, right? If you wanted to go out and run a marathon, you wouldn't try just run 27 miles one day, and the next day you'd collapse, right? You'd say, that wasn't much fun. But if you train every day, then there is a result. If you put in the time and the energy, there will be a result. So in the same way with mindfulness, as you do this, as you commit to it, that will be reflected back in your experience of connection and your experience of being alive. So for different people, the way in might be a little bit different. For some people who have not as much emotional content, but a lot of thinking, just sitting meditation might be really good. For people who have more emotions to work with, I usually recommend working through the body, maybe doing chanting meditation. So chanting, using sound to help to bring us to one point, that's a very powerful practice. And then also these kind of body-centered practices, so walking meditation. We have to walk someplace anyway, but if we bring ourselves to that act of walking, then right there where we are, that's our meditation practice. Maybe we walk to work, we can, get some solid mindfulness time in right there. I do that.
Yeah. And basically with meditation, it's you're focusing on your breath, the breath going in, the breath going out, and you're almost kind of, if your mind, if you're thinking about a million things, as we all do, I suppose it's like a choppy ocean. You're wanting to try and settle that. Is that right?
Yeah. So as we sit, we don't need to empty or stop the thoughts. We don't need to blank them out, but we can have what Zen Master Isan Dorsey called a blank relationship with them, which means not having tea with them. So we have a thought that comes up. Maybe it's a pleasant thought, oh, this is great, I'm going to see my friend today. Or it's an unpleasant thought, it's Monday, I'm going back to work. But there's something that's beyond the pleasant and unpleasant thoughts. We can notice the thought and we come right back to our direct experience. And then through that, we're just not identifying with the thought. We're not jumping on that train and traveling off to Malibu. We notice it and we come back, we bring ourselves back. So just in that way, the sky is blue, but the clouds are coming and going. The clouds do not hinder the sky being blue. The sky is always blue. Yeah. So just in that way, the clarity of our mind is not diminished by the thoughts that are coming and going. We just learn to identify more with that spaciousness.
Yeah. So the thought comes in, don't run with it. And if you do find yourself running with it, just bring yourself back to the center again and resume.
Yeah. Yeah, and in that way, it's actually really practical for our whole everyday life. Yeah, I work in a hospital right now. Actually, I'm serving as a chaplain resident at UCSF Medical Center, and so especially during the pandemic, the hospital is not like practicing in a zendo. It's not quiet. It's not going to be serene. If I wait for that, I might be waiting a long time. But in the midst of that, I can practice and just let all of that be what it is, and witness that. And in the midst of that, there is a peace. There is a clarity that arrives, and it's actually in some ways stronger because I find it in the middle of the din.
Yeah. So, No, I think it's very powerful. I think there's a very common thread. Something similar. I've been reading a bit about Stoicism recently, and there's that kind of like thread about keeping yourself centered, not letting yourself be run away with the things you can't control, and to focus on what you can control within yourself.
Yeah, right. That thing. It's, what is it, like the Serenity Prayer? Grant me the serenity to accept the things I have to, and the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Like that. Yeah. Like being okay with things just as they are.
Yeah, it's making peace with things you can't change. You mentioned working in the hospital, and I remember reading your I think it was your website in bio. You did like care for people who were basically at the end of their lives or were dying. What important lessons did you gain from that work that like ourselves that we can take on board and hopefully get more from our own life?
I think what I've taken from that is how precious this moment is. That we have this precious human life. Even with our body, when we have a stomach upset or something, there's more that's going on that's right with the body than that's wrong with it. And as you said, not waiting for things to be perfect. Like not waiting for happiness to have the perfect job, or the right amount of money, or the perfect weather. There's a visit that Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh made to Wellesley College. He sat with the president and made her a calligraphy, and the calligraphy, she's a Christian, the calligraphy said, "The kingdom is now or never." And so if we kind of live fully, and with our "I love you, I forgive you," if we keep current, that means that all of our energy is in present time. That's our own place of power and our own place of joy. That's what the happiness is, not dependent on condition. Yeah.
No, I think that's a very powerful message, especially, and I've talked to people about this. I think in our society, death has been very much brushed to the peripheral. We don't talk about it. It's literally a taboo subject. And I think it's very easy to take things for granted. That especially when I was young, you kind of think you're invincible. You're gonna live forever, and times you just waste time away. And so I think that's a very powerful thing to take on. We're nearly at the end, and I just want, there's another question I just wanted to ask with regards to Buddhism, if you don't mind. What is enlightenment? I know a lot of people maybe you've been asked this a million times. I apologize for asking you. How would you explain it? Just again, for anyone maybe is looking into Buddhism or and it's maybe came up and they're kind of
No, that my teacher, Mahakasananda, used to answer that when people would say to him, "What is Nirvana?" And he would say, "Nirvana is here and now." So at this moment, like oftentimes, especially in our modern life, our mind is in 10,000 places. But when we bring ourselves back to this place of not knowing, this place before any idea, when we're just one with our life, then our mind and body are inside and outside. We and the universe completely become one. We have that. People sometimes will talk about that as a flow experience. These epiphanies. These moments when we have this perfect joy. With a sense of awe or wonder because we've just seen the stars at night. Or we've looked into the eyes of our grandchild for the first time. There's a sense of wonder. And so we have those moments of being one with our life, before any idea. When we touch into that, that's the experience that you could call the numinous. It's a moment of transcending the small self to touch into something that's greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think at the heart of all the mystical traditions, there is that in some way. So when we touch into that place before thinking, then we see clearly. We see the person in front of us. We hear clearly. We hear the sound of the wind, the birds. And then we can respond spontaneously, which is what it's all about. It's have the vision is good, but then we have to put it into action among the people. So then when we see someone who's hungry, can we give them food? If someone needs directions, can we show them which way to go?
Yeah.
That's the proof of the pudding.
Yeah. Basically practicing what you preach or what you
yeah
about. Yeah. No, definitely. I think that's a great answer, because again, Buddhism and different religions are something I kind of looked into, and you do sometimes you meet different people. I said to Christopher about this as well, and you go, what is Zen? And they give you some kind of long-winded, or they give you some, they think they understand, and they give you some kind of thing they've just read in the book, and you kind of go, right, okay, and you're kind of like, I don't understand it than I did before. So that's great, because I think that kind of summarizes it, and because I think when you kind of read up and stuff, you hear the word enlightenment, it sounds kind of, you can't really go, what does that mean? So I think that puts it into really nice kind of understanding for people like yourself.
Oh, good.
Basically, I've been, different people have kind of been interviewing and people have been reading about, and one of the common threads that people talk about is their own mission statement. And if you don't mind me asking, this is a kind of a new question I kind of brought into the show. What would your mission statement be, if you had? I'm sorry for it on the spot.
No, that's okay. So my mission statement would be, how can I help you?
Okay.
Like with whoever is in front of me right now, how can I be of service? That's the most important thing. And right now at UCSF Medical Center, I feel like there's been a lot of opportunities to be of service where it's most needed, and that's been deeply satisfying.
Yeah.
Like right now, what can I do to simply connect and be of some help?
Yeah.
Because when I really touch into it, it becomes more and more clear to me that when I help someone else, I'm also helping myself. There's no separation between that.
Yeah, I suppose more so now. I suppose you get the sense that I'm actually doing something to kind of help alleviate the suffering going on around me. Is that be true? Yeah. No, definitely not. Good. One last thing, just want to kind of raise before we wrap up. I've talked to people about different religions and about reform in religion. I think there's a lot of people kind of within their own religion, the way things have been going haven't been great, and people have talked about reform. And then there's people who are kind of say that as a species we're leaving religion behind, and there's very much, I think everything's kind of in turmoil. From where you are, do you think that people will kind of come back to religion, or maybe more people will come to Buddhism because it gives them a bit more practicality? Maybe if that makes sense as a question.
No, I think that's a good question. What I would say about it is that I think it's important for people to have a real sense of ethics, and whether they're drawing that from spirituality or from organized religion, that all just depends. The one could say that spirituality is the connection with all that is, and religion is the particular framework, the culture, practice, etc., through which they access connection with all that is.
Okay.
And so for some people, the open-ended spirituality is going to be sufficient. It has to be, because not everyone is religious. But through that, through tapping into that spirituality, I think the basis for that is that we all, in our early life, were dependent upon the kindness of someone else. That's where spirituality is essential. All of us had that, because if we were helpless as infants, we wouldn't have survived without that kindness.
Yeah.
And from there we go, and we can see the attachment theory, that what has made it possible for us to be fully human beings is the love that we experienced and that was available. And how can we support the flow of that love, going forward for the next generation? That's where this fits into a kind of secular ethics of wholeness.
Yeah.
Now, people can absolutely access that. It doesn't take anything away from their religion if they're religious, but it also helps people who aren't considering themselves religious.
Yeah.
Because we absolutely do need that ethics of wholeness to see how connected we are to each other. If everyone wants to be happy, everyone wants to avoid suffering, and we all have the technology. We all have the same basic original operating instructions, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then all of this practice is just a way to get out of our own way and to let that clarity come through.
Yeah, we definitely, and hopefully help us become better versions of ourselves, or more versions of ourselves. No,
definitely.
Hyang, thank you very much. Just to wrap up, if people want to get in touch with yourself, maybe get some advice, or want to get involved in Buddhism, or even purchase the book, or get more information in the book, where can they do that?
I have a website. It's www.mountainpath, like mountain, path.org, and that has the information about the book and information about sitting meditation and all good things. So that's a nice way to start out.
No, that's great. I'll include the link, and once I upload this, I'll include the link below in the description. Hyang, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on today. And,
thank you very much.
Thank you for answering some of my own personal questions on Buddhism. I really appreciate that, so thank you.
No, the pleasure is absolutely mine. It's been an honor to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.